My wife announced she was leaving me at my own retirement dinner while my daughter filmed it for social media. She captioned it "finally free" and got 2,000 likes before dessert arrived. That's when I learned what 37 years of loyalty actually meant to the people I loved most. I'm Robert Mitchell, and for nearly 4 decades I drove trucks across this country. From Vancouver to Halifax, through blizzards and ice storms, across mountain passes and prairie highways. I kept goods moving so families could eat, so stores could stock their shelves, so hospitals could get their supplies. And that night, in front of everyone who'd gathered to celebrate my career, my own family treated my life's work like a prison sentence they'd finally escaped. My wife, Sandra, thought she was walking away from a tired old trucker with a modest pension. My daughter, Megan, believed she was documenting the liberation of a woman trapped by mediocrity. My son, Kyle, saw his chance to finally stop pretending his father's job was anything but embarrassing. But here's what none of them knew. While they'd been planning their escape, I'd been quietly building something they couldn't imagine. I smiled, wished Sandra well, and asked if she'd checked the ownership records on the building we were sitting in. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're from. Because tonight, you're going to learn what happens when patient people finally decide to speak up. Let me take you back to understand how we got here. For 37 years, I drove long haul for Trans-Canada Freight, Calgary to Toronto, Edmonton to Montreal, Winnipeg to Vancouver. 6 days on the road, 2 days home. Rain, snow, black ice on the Trans-Canada. I kept the supply chain moving. But somewhere along those endless kilometers, my family decided that made me invisible. It started with small things. Sandra would introduce me at neighborhood barbecues as my husband Robert. He's away a lot for work. Never he's a long-haul driver or he keeps Canada moving. Just away a lot. Like I was some distant relative who occasionally visited. The kids absorbed it. Kyle, now 31 and working in finance in Toronto, learned early to deflect questions about my career. When his Bay Street colleagues asked about family, he'd say dad's in transportation logistics. Never proud, never specific. Just logistics. Like I shuffled papers in some warehouse office. Megan was more direct about her embarrassment. At 28, with her marketing degree and her Instagram following, she'd perfected the art of cropping me out. Family photos on her feed somehow never included me. When followers asked about her father, she'd say he travels for work and change the subject to her latest sponsored post. I overheard her once, at a coffee shop in Mississauga, during one of my rare days home. She was with friends, discussing parents. "Your dad sounds amazing," one said about another girl's father who ran a tech startup in Waterloo. "What does your dad do, Megan?" "Oh, he's basically retired now. Semi-retired. Does consulting." Consulting. I was hauling 40 tons of freight across 4 provinces that week. But it was the quiet moments that really showed me where I stood. Like when Kyle needed a down payment for his condo in Liberty Village. $60,000. He asked me for it like he was doing me a favor by even considering I might have it. "Dad, I know trucking doesn't pay great, but I figured I'd ask before going to the bank." I wrote the check without hesitation. That was 3 years ago. He never asked how I had it so easily available. Or when Megan needed seed money for her influencer marketing agency. $25,000 to get started. She came to me last, after trying her mother, her boyfriend's family, and 2 friends from university. "Daddy, I hate to ask, but you're literally my last option." My only value was being the backup plan. The worst part was watching Sandra feed this narrative. At dinner parties, she'd laugh about my simple needs. How I was content with my Tim Hortons coffee and my hockey games on the radio. How I didn't need much to be happy. "Rob's not complicated," she'd say. "Give him his truck and his road maps and he's fine." Like I was a golden retriever. She complained to her sister on the phone. I heard the calls when I was home unexpectedly early from a canceled run. He could have started his own trucking company. Gone owner-operator. Made real money. But he was too comfortable just being an employee. What she didn't know was that I'd been using that employee income very carefully. While she spent money at Winners and took girls' trips to Niagara on the lake, I'd been learning about commercial real estate. While she bought new furniture and planned cottage weekends with friends, I'd been studying property values and lease agreements. Every overnight haul, every weekend run, Every holiday I worked while they stayed home warm and safe. That money had a purpose. My first property was a small strip plaza in Brampton. Bought it in 2009 when the market dipped. 75,000 down. Fixed it up on my days home. Within 6 months, I had 3 tenants, a dry cleaner, a convenience store, and a physiotherapy clinic paying me $4,200 a month. More than enough to cover the mortgage, and then some, but I never mentioned it. Sandra would have found reasons we needed that money for other things. The kids would have seen it as proof they deserved more allowance. So I kept quiet and I kept buying. Property 2 came in 2010, a small office building in Mississauga. Then a warehouse in Vaughan in 2012. A mixed-use building in Hamilton in 2014. Each one carefully selected. Each one generating positive cash flow. Each one completely invisible to my family. They saw me come home exhausted, smelling of diesel and road food, and assumed that meant unsuccessful. They never wondered why I wasn't stressed about money, never questioned how we always seemed to have what we needed, even on my supposedly limited salary. The disrespect became routine. Kyle would ask for money with the same tone you'd use with a bank machine. No gratitude, no interest in how I'd earned it. Just withdrawal requests with an expectation of approval. Megan treated family dinners like charity work. She'd show up, pick at her food, and scroll through her phone. When I'd try to share a story from the road, she'd give me the same polite smile she'd give a stranger on the subway making small talk. And Sandra, she'd started looking at me like I was furniture. Not a husband, not a partner, not even a roommate. Just an object that occasionally appeared and needed to be worked around. I started extending my roots. Volunteering for the long hauls. Not because the company needed me, but because home felt like a waiting room where I was permanently sitting for an appointment nobody intended to keep. But here's the thing about drivers. We spend thousands of hours alone with our thoughts. We observe. We listen to the world through our radios and our phone calls home. We notice patterns, and we plan. By the summer of last year, I could feel the marriage ending. Sandra had joined a women's empowerment group that met on Wednesday evenings. New clothes, new hairstyle, coming home energized in ways that had nothing to do with personal growth seminars. The signs weren't subtle. Text messages she'd hide when I walked into the kitchen, phone calls she'd take in the garage, suddenly needing to run errands that took entire Saturday afternoons. I could have confronted her, could have demanded explanations, but I'd learned something over the years. Information is more valuable than accusation. So I watched. I listened. I waited. The first real evidence came in August. A charge on our joint credit card for dinner at Canoe in Toronto. $340 for 2 people. Problem was, she told me she was having dinner with her cousin that night. Her cousin, who was recovering from surgery and hadn't left Kitchener in 2 months. Then came the gym membership upgrade. From a basic $25 monthly plan at Good Life to a premium $90 package that included personal training sessions. The trainer's name was Marcus Webb. I didn't need to be a detective, but the personal betrayal was just the beginning. Sandra started talking about our future differently. Suggestions about selling the house, maybe downsizing to a condo. Comments about how we were asset-rich and cash-poor for people our age. That's when I understood what was really happening. She wasn't just planning to leave. She was planning to take half of everything she thought we had. The irony was staggering. While she worried about our supposed cash flow problems, I was generating $22,000 a month in rental income. While she stressed about whether we could afford retirement, I owned 14 properties across the GTA, free and clear. While she feared our savings wouldn't last, I had enough passive income to retire 3 times over. But if I stayed silent, if I let this play out the way she was planning, I'd lose everything. Ontario is a no-fault divorce province. The courts don't care why marriages end. They just divide assets down the middle. The house we'd lived in for 25 years, half to her. My pension from 37 years of driving, half to her. The RRSP she thought was our entire retirement, half to her. But here's where her plan had a fatal flaw. She didn't know about the real estate portfolio. Every property was purchased in my name only, using income she'd never tracked, during years when she'd paid no attention to our finances beyond her weekly shopping trips. Legally, those properties were mine. The income they generated went into business accounts she didn't know existed. Morally, well, that depends on how you feel about someone who spends 37 years treating their spouse like an embarrassment while secretly planning to leave the moment it becomes convenient. The kids were part of the plan too. Kyle had started making comments about how dad's getting older, and how maybe it's time for mom to think about her own happiness. Megan posted Instagram stories from expensive restaurants and weekend trips that I wasn't included in. Family events where I was either not invited or made to feel like a tolerated guest. They were already practicing life without me. The breaking point came in late September. Kyle called to ask if he could borrow $15,000 for investment opportunities. When I asked for specifics, he got irritated. "Dad, I work in finance. I know what I'm doing. I just need the capital." 3 days later, Megan called with a similar request. $12,000 for an expansion opportunity in her marketing business. They weren't asking their father for help. They were making withdrawals from what they saw as a joint account they'd soon be managing anyway. That's when I knew I had to act. Because if I let this continue, I wouldn't just lose my marriage. I'd lose my self-respect. The confrontation started over dinner on a Thursday evening in early October. Nothing special. Just the four of us around the kitchen table in our Oakville house, like we'd done hundreds of times before when I was home from the road. But the undercurrent had changed. Everyone knew something was coming. Sandra had made her special roast chicken, the one she only made when she felt guilty about something. Kyle had driven in from Toronto for the weekend. Megan had come over from her apartment in Burlington. "This is nice," Sandra said, cutting her meat with more precision than necessary, having everyone together. "Yeah," Kyle agreed. "We should do this more often. While we still can." The phrasing was deliberate. While we still can. Like our family had an expiration date everyone knew about except me. I set down my fork. "Something on your mind, Kyle?" He exchanged glances with his mother. "Dad, we've been talking about your future. About Mom's future." "Our future?" I asked. "Your futures," Megan corrected quickly. "Both of you. Separately." I waited. Let them fill the silence. Sandra jumped in. "Rob, you've worked so hard for so many years. Maybe it's time to think about what comes next." "What comes next is retirement," I said. "In 3 weeks. That's what the dinner is for." "Right. But after that," Kyle continued, "you and Mom might want different things. That's normal. People grow apart." "People grow apart," I repeated. "Or people make choices." Sandra's fork clinked against her plate. "Rob, what's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just thinking out loud." Kyle leaned forward. "Dad, can I be honest with you?" "I hope so. You've been different lately. Distant, like you're angry about something." I almost laughed. "Angry?" "Yeah. Like, you resent us for some reason." "For what reason would I resent you, Kyle?" He looked at his mother again. "Maybe because you feel like you didn't achieve what you wanted to achieve, and you're taking it out on the family." The audacity was breathtaking. My son, who'd never worked a physically demanding day in his life, questioning my achievements. "What did I want to achieve?" "Exactly," Megan answered. "Dad, you know what we mean. Most people your age have more to show for their careers." "More to show? Like what?" "Like ownership of something, a business, real assets, something beyond a pension and a pickup truck." I nodded slowly. "Real assets." "You've been an employee your whole life," Kyle said. "There's nothing wrong with that, but what?" Sandra finally spoke up. "But it limits options, Rob. For both of us." "What options are you looking for, Sandra?" The use of her full name caught her attention. I only called her Sandra when I was serious. "I'm just saying that maybe we both deserve a chance to explore what we want in our next chapter." "Next chapter?" I repeated. "Without each other?" "That's not what I said. But it's what you meant." The table went quiet. Kyle cleared his throat. "Dad, if you and Mom did decide to restructure things, we'd understand." "Restructure things?" "Yeah, like financially. The house, the RRSPs, all that." I looked around the table. At my wife of 37 years, at my son who'd borrowed $60,000 from me without ever asking where I got it. At my daughter, who was embarrassed to tell people what I did for work. You've given this a lot of thought, I said. We just want everyone to be happy, Megan said. Everyone to be happy. I stood up from the table. That's interesting. Where are you going? Sandra asked. To the garage. Got some thinking to do. Dad, Kyle called after me. We're just trying to help. I paused at the doorway. Kyle, let me ask you something. When you needed money for your condo down payment, where did you think it came from? What do you mean? $60,000. Where did you think I got that money? Your savings? Your salary? My salary that you just said wasn't enough to build anything meaningful? He didn't answer. Megan, same question. When you needed $25,000 to start your business, what made you think I'd have it? Dad, I don't understand what you're getting at. I'm getting at the fact that none of you have ever asked what I do with my money. You just assume I don't have any. Rob, Sandra said carefully, what are you trying to say? I smiled. I'm saying that maybe you should be more curious about the man you're planning to divorce. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Who said anything about divorce? Sandra asked. Sandra, you've been planning this for months. That's ridiculous. Is Marcus Webb ridiculous too? The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. But I wasn't done. Not even close. The retirement dinner was scheduled for October 28th at a restaurant in downtown Toronto. Sandra had insisted on organizing it herself. It's the least I can do, she'd said, after all these years of you being on the road. At the time, I thought she was being thoughtful. Looking back, I realized she was setting the stage. The venue was Harbor 60 Steakhouse. 87 people, co-workers from TransCanada Freight going back 20 years, union representatives, neighbors, extended family, a few people I didn't recognize, who turned out to be Sandra's empowerment group friends. The party started well. My supervisor, Dave Chen, gave a speech about my safety record. 37 years, 4 million kilometers, 0 at-fault accidents. Rob Mitchell is the guy you want behind the wheel when the weather turns ugly. People laughed, applauded, told stories about emergency runs we'd made together, the ice storm of 2013, the supply chain crisis during the pandemic, times when the country needed goods to keep moving, and we'd made it happen. I felt appreciated, valued. For the first time in months, I remembered why I'd been proud of my work. Kyle and Megan stood near the bar, checking their phones. Sandra mingled with the crowd, playing the role of proud wife, perfectly. She'd even made a photo slideshow of my career. Pictures of me with my rig at various truck stops, receiving safety awards. Standing in front of the Rocky Mountains at sunrise. Sandra put this together herself, people kept saying. You're lucky to have someone who appreciates what you do. If only they knew. The main course went normally. Standard retirement party stuff. People making jokes about me sleeping in past 5 a.m. for the first time in decades. Asking what I planned to do with myself. I kept my answers vague. Maybe some traveling. Maybe some projects around the house. That's when Sandra stood up to make her speech. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, she began. Rob has worked so hard for so many years. He deserves to be celebrated. Applause. Smiles. Everyone thinking this was a normal, loving tribute. Marriage isn't easy when your husband works the kind of job Rob works. There were weeks I didn't know what province he was in. Nights when I worried about him on icy highways. More nods of understanding. Spouses of other drivers knew exactly what she meant. But Rob always came home. He always provided. He always put his family first. The past tense wasn't accidental. I caught it even if nobody else did. Which is why, she continued, this felt like the right time to make an announcement. The room went quiet. This wasn't on the program. After 37 years of Rob putting his work ahead of everything else, I think it's time for both of us to start new chapters. People looked confused. Start new chapters? We were supposed to start new chapters together. Sandra reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. Rob, you've worked so hard for so long. You deserve freedom. Real freedom. She handed me the envelope. These are divorce papers. I filed them yesterday. The silence was deafening. 87 people watched me open that envelope and find 18 pages of legal documents requesting dissolution of our marriage. But here's the thing nobody expected. I smiled. Not the smile of someone pretending to be okay. The smile of someone who'd been waiting for this exact moment. "Thank you, Sandra," I said calmly. "This is very thoughtful." People didn't know how to react. Was this planned? Were we both okay with this? Kyle stepped forward from the bar area. "Dad, Mom told us this was happening. We support this decision. We think it's for the best," Megan added, holding up her phone. "She was recording. For both of you." And then Kyle said the words that sealed their fate. "Honestly, Dad, this might be the best thing that's ever happened to this family." Megan laughed and typed something on her screen. Finally. Freedom for everyone, right? Finally. Like my marriage ending was a celebration. Something to document for her followers. The crowd was stunned. People who'd known our family for years watched my children film their parents' divorce like it was content for their social media feeds. "Kids," Dave Chen said carefully, "maybe this isn't the time or place." "No, it's perfect," Sandra interrupted. "Rob deserves honesty. We all do." I stood up, still holding the divorce papers. The room was dead silent. "Sandra, this is definitely honest," I said. "Very honest. I hope you understand, Rob. This isn't about failure. It's about accepting reality." "Reality?" I repeated. "Yes. Let's definitely talk about reality." I folded the papers neatly and put them in my jacket pocket. Since we're being honest in front of all these people, maybe I should be honest too. Sandra's confidence flickered. "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe it's time everyone understood what they're really celebrating here." Kyle looked nervous. "Dad, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that your mother has been having an affair with her personal trainer for the past 8 months. Gasps around the room. Sandra went pale. "I'm talking about the fact that you both have been planning this divorce for months, thinking you were going to get half of what you assumed I had." "Rob," Sandra warned. Don't what? Don't tell the truth at my own retirement party?" I looked around the room. All these people who'd come to honor my 37 years of service. People who respected what I'd accomplished. "The truth is, Sandra filed those papers because she thinks I'm a failure who never achieved anything meaningful. The truth is, my children are celebrating because they're embarrassed by what their father does for work." That's not Kyle started. "The truth is," I continued, "none of you have ever asked what I do with the money I make. You just assume I don't make much." My phone buzzed. Text message. I glanced at it and smiled. Actually, the timing on this is perfect. I just got a text from my property manager. The Hamilton building is officially fully leased for another 5 years. That's building number 14, in case anyone's keeping track. The confusion in the room was visible. "Building number 14? Dave Chen asked. "Yeah. The mixed-use building I bought 5 years ago. Goes with the 13 other properties I've acquired since 2009. Dead silence. "Rob," Sandra whispered. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that while you've been planning to divorce me for half of nothing, I've been generating about $22,000 a month in rental income." Kyle's face went white. Megan lowered her phone. "I'm saying that your failure of a husband owns about $4 million in commercial real estate across the greater Toronto area." The room erupted. People started talking all at once. Union representatives who knew my salary were doing math in their heads. Neighbors who'd assumed we were struggling were recalculating everything they thought they knew about our family. But I wasn't done. Not even close. The chaos in the room was immediate. People talking over each other, asking questions, trying to process what they'd just heard. But all I could focus on was the look on Sandra's face. Pure, undiluted shock. "That's impossible," she said quietly. "We don't have that kind of money." "You don't," I corrected. "I do." Dave Chen stepped forward. "Rob, are you serious? 14 properties?" 14 properties. Started with a strip plaza in Brampton in 2009. Added 1 or 2 a year since then. "How?" Kyle demanded. "How did you afford—" "Overtime," I said simply. "Long hauls, weekend runs, holiday pay. Every extra kilometer I drove while you were all at home complaining about me never being around. That money went into real estate. My union representative, Mike Baxter, was grinning. Rob, you magnificent bastard. You've been building an empire while we all thought you were just hauling freight. I was hauling freight, I said. That was my day job. Megan found her voice, though she'd finally put her phone down. Dad, why didn't you tell us? Tell you what? That I was investing money? When would that conversation have happened? Between you telling your Instagram followers that I was semi-retired and Kyle explaining that I worked in logistics? People were pulling out phones, probably texting family members about the drama they were witnessing. The retirement party had turned into the most entertaining evening Harbor 60 had seen in years. Rob, Sandra said, trying to regain control. We need to talk, privately. No, I said firmly. We're done talking privately. 37 years of private conversations got us here. Let's try public honesty for a change. My phone rang. I looked at the caller ID. Premier Property Management. Excuse me, I said to the crowd, and answered it. Mr. Mitchell, it's Jennifer. Sorry to bother you, but we just got an offer on the Vaughn warehouse. Cash buyer. Above asking. Wants to close in 45 days. How much? I asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. 1.2 million. You paid $650 for it 8 years ago. $550,000 in profit. That's right. Should I accept? I looked around the room. 87 people hanging on every word. Let me think about it. I'll call you tomorrow. Sounds good. And Mr. Mitchell, congratulations on your retirement. You've built something really impressive. I hung up and smiled at Sandra. Commercial real estate appreciates, I explained. Unlike some other investments I've made. The dig wasn't subtle, and everyone caught it. Mike Baxter was shaking his head in amazement. Rob, what's the total monthly income? $22,347. Every month. That's more than most people make in a year, someone called out. It's more than I made in a year when I started at TransCanada, I agreed. Kyle was doing math on his phone. Dad, that's almost $270,000 a year. In passive income, yes. But you still worked your regular job? I like my regular job. And the regular job provided the down payments for the properties. Why leave money on the table? Sandra was starting to realize the implications. Rob, these properties, are they in your name? They're in my name. All of them? All of them. Purchased with income you never tracked during years when you never asked about our finances. The legal implications were sinking in. In Ontario, property acquired with separate funds during marriage can remain separate property. Sandra's divorce papers were asking for half of assets she didn't know existed and couldn't legally claim. Mr. Mitchell, said a voice from the crowd. I didn't recognize her. I'm Patricia Okonkwo, family law attorney. I was your colleague's guest tonight, but I have to ask, are these properties matrimonial property? No, I said. They're mine. Purchased with my individual earnings. Titled in my name only. Managed through my business accounts. Then Mrs. Mitchell's divorce filing. Mrs. Mitchell's divorce filing asks for half of the house we live in and half of the RRSP she knows about. She can have both. I pulled out my phone and showed the crowd my banking app. The RRSP she's asking for half of has about $92,000 in it. People started doing math. Sandra was asking for half of $92,000 while standing next to a man worth over $4 million. The house is worth about $800,000, I continued. Minus the mortgage, that's about $300,000 in equity. She can have my half too. So, she gets $196,000 total? Kyle asked, his finance brain struggling with numbers he didn't want to accept. She gets $196,000 plus whatever Marcus Webb has in his gym locker. The mention of Marcus's name sent another wave of murmurs through the crowd. Megan was crying now, mascara running, phone forgotten on the table. Dad, we didn't know. We had no idea. Megan, you never asked. None of you ever asked. Kyle stepped forward. Dad, I'm sorry. We all are. Can we fix this? I looked at my son, 31 years old, working in finance on Bay Street, about to realize his entire understanding of his father had been wrong. Kyle, do you remember what you said 10 minutes ago? About this being the best thing that ever happened to this family? He nodded, ashamed. Did you mean that? Dad, I was confused, Mom said. Did you mean that? No. I turned to Megan. What about you? Did you mean it when you captioned your video, "Finally Freedom"? She couldn't answer. I looked around the room. All these people who'd come to celebrate my career, now witnessing the complete collapse of my family relationships. The truth is, I said to the crowd, I've spent 37 years providing for people who never respected what I provided. I've given everything to a family that saw me as an obligation. I pulled the divorce papers out of my pocket. Sandra, these papers ask for a divorce. You'll get a divorce. They ask for half of our assets. You'll get half of the assets you knew about. I signed the papers in front of everyone. But the assets you didn't know about, the ones I built while you were embarrassed by my work, those stay with me. I handed the signed papers back to her. Congratulations on your new freedom. The room was dead silent. Now, I said to the crowd, who wants dessert? The dinner ended quietly after that. People filtered out in small groups, talking in hushed voices about what they'd witnessed. Some stopped to shake my hand, tell me they were proud of what I'd built. Others just nodded respectfully and headed for the door. Sandra left without saying goodbye. Her empowerment group friends followed her out like a defeated army. Kyle and Megan lingered near the entrance, clearly wanting to talk but not knowing what to say. I was settling the bill when my phone rang. My attorney, Raymond Chang. Rob, I just got a very frantic call from someone claiming to be your wife's divorce lawyer. Is it true you revealed substantial assets at a public gathering tonight? Nothing was hidden, Raymond. Just never discussed. Rob, we need to meet first thing tomorrow morning. This changes everything. It changes everything for Sandra. Changes nothing for me. It changes everything for you too. Property division, spousal support, the whole case. I finished signing the credit card receipt. Raymond, every property is in my name, purchased with my individual earnings, managed through separate business accounts. You're absolutely right. But we need to document everything properly. Already done? I've been documenting everything for 15 years. Kyle appeared beside me. Dad, can we talk? I told Raymond I'd see him in the morning and hung up. Talk, I said. Dad, we messed up. Really messed up. You did. Is there a way to fix this? I looked at my son, really looked at him, 31 years old. Smart enough to work in finance. Stupid enough to celebrate his parents' divorce in public. Kyle, what do you want to fix? Our relationship. The family. What relationship? You mean the one where you borrow money from me without asking where I get it? Where you're embarrassed to tell people what I do for work? Dad, I was wrong about that. You were wrong about a lot of things. Megan joined us, eyes red from crying, makeup ruined. Daddy, she said, using the name she hadn't called me in 15 years. I'm so sorry. Sorry about what? Specifically? About not appreciating you. About being embarrassed. About everything. About the video. What happened to the video? I deleted it. After how many likes? She looked down. 2,000 something. 2,000 people saw your mother divorce me. 2,000 people saw you celebrate. I know. I'm so sorry. I nodded. Megan, do you remember when you needed money to start your business? Yes. You tried 3 other people first. Yes. Why? Because I thought you might not have it. Because you thought I was poor. I thought we were all just average, normal, not wealthy. No, Megan, you thought I was poor. Your mother manages the household finances. You knew exactly how much money was coming in and going out. You just assumed I wasn't contributing much. She didn't deny it. Kyle, same question. When you needed money for your condo, why did you phrase it like you were doing me a favor by asking? I don't know. You do know. Tell me. I guess I thought you'd feel useful. Like you were finally helping with something important. Something important. As opposed to keeping the supply chains running across this country for 37 years. He looked down. Dad, I know how that sounds now. How it sounds now, Kyle. It sounded the same way then. You just didn't care how it sounded. I pulled out my phone and opened my contact list. I'm going to make some calls, I told them. Legal calls, financial calls, practical calls about what happens next. What has happened next? Megan asked. Next, your mother gets exactly what she asked for. A divorce from a man she considered a failure. But you're not a failure. I know that. The question is, what are you going to do with that information? Kyle straightened up. Dad, what can we do? How can we prove we understand? I considered the question. Kyle, you work in finance. How much do you make? About 120. With bonus, maybe 150. And how much of that do you save? Maybe 10%? So 15,000 a year. In how long could you save 60,000? The amount I gave you for your condo? He did the math. 4 years. 4 years of savings that I gave you in one check. Did you ever think about that? No. Megan, you want to expand your business. What would it take? Probably 75,000 for the next phase. New office, staff, marketing. And if you had to earn that yourself? 3 years. Maybe 4. 3 or 4 years of work. I could write that check tomorrow, but I'm not going to. Why not? Because you've never earned my respect. You've only ever expected my money. Kyle's jaw tightened. Dad, that's not fair. Fair? You celebrated your parents' divorce in public at my retirement dinner. You think fair is relevant now? I headed toward the exit. Dad, wait, Megan called. Are you saying you'll never help us? I turned back. I'm saying help is something you ask for from people you respect, not something you demand from people you're embarrassed by. And with that, I left them standing in Harbor 60, finally understanding what they'd lost. The next 4 months played out exactly as I'd predicted. Sandra's divorce lawyer, William Torres, demanded full financial disclosure. When I provided documentation of my 14 properties, his confidence evaporated faster than ice on a June highway. Mr. Mitchell, he said during our first mediation session, this portfolio is substantial. My client was unaware of these assets. Your client never asked about these assets, my attorney Raymond replied. In 15 years of marriage to a man who worked overtime regularly, she never once questioned where that money went. The math was simple. Under Ontario law, Sandra could claim half of any assets acquired during marriage with matrimonial funds. But every property was purchased with my individual earnings, titled in my name, and managed through separate business accounts I'd maintained since 2009. These are clearly separate assets, Raymond explained. Mr. Mitchell can demonstrate that every down payment, every repair, every improvement was funded through his individual labor. Sandra sat across the table, looking like she'd been hit with a transport truck. Rob, this isn't fair. We were married. I supported your career. Sandra, you were embarrassed by my career. There's a difference. The final divorce settlement was signed in February. Sandra received her half of the house equity. After closing costs and fees, about $148,000. She also got half of our RRSP, $46,000, and the 2019 Toyota Highlander. Total settlement, $194,000. She moved into a one-bedroom apartment in Etobicoke. Marcus Webb, her personal trainer boyfriend, ended their relationship 3 weeks after the property revelations. Apparently, dating a soon-to-be divorcee with no money wasn't as appealing as dating a woman he thought had assets. The social consequences were swift and predictable. Our neighborhood in Oakville, where Sandra had spent years positioning herself as the long-suffering wife of an unambitious truck driver, suddenly understood the truth. She'd left a multimillionaire for a gym trainer who made $35,000 a year. She was always talking about Rob's lack of ambition, our neighbor Margaret told me at the grocery store. Now we know who really lacked vision. Sandra's sister stopped taking her calls. Her book club found reasons to meet without her. Her empowerment group disbanded when everyone realized she'd been empowered right out of a fortune. The narrative she'd built about being held back by her husband's mediocrity crumbled when everyone realized she'd been living off his success while publicly diminishing it. Meanwhile, Kyle's financial reality hit hard. He'd been living beyond his means in Liberty Village, spending his Bay Street salary on restaurants and club memberships and a lifestyle designed to prove he was nothing like his blue-collar father. When he called me in January, his voice was different, quieter, humbler. Dad, I need to talk to you. About what? About my situation. I'm in trouble. What kind of trouble? Financial trouble. I've been living off credit for years, telling myself the bonuses would cover it. They haven't. How much trouble? 87,000 in credit card debt, plus my line of credit, plus the condo fees I'm behind on. That's a lot of trouble. I know. Dad, I'm not calling to ask for money. I know I don't deserve that. I'm calling to ask. How do I fix this? How did you do it? Build what you built. I was silent for a moment. This was different. This wasn't a withdrawal request. This was a question. You want to know how I did it? Yes. I spent less than I earned. Every single month. For 37 years. That's it? That's the foundation. Everything else builds on that. You can't invest money you've already spent. But the properties, the portfolio, how did you learn? Books, seminars, trial and error. Made mistakes too. Lost money on 2 properties before I figured out what I was doing. You lost money? Everybody loses money learning. The question is whether you learn from it. He was quiet. Dad, can I take you to dinner sometime? Not to ask for anything, just to talk, to learn. I considered it. Where? Anywhere. Tim Hortons if you want. I don't care. That was new. Kyle had never suggested Tim Hortons for anything. There's a good truck stop near Milton. Best Pie in Ontario. Thursday works for me. Thursday? Yes. Thank you, Dad. Megan's crisis came differently. Her marketing agency was struggling. The influencer market had shifted, and she hadn't adapted. Revenue was down 40%. She was 3 months behind on her office lease. She didn't call to ask for money. She called to ask for advice. Dad, I don't know what to do. The business is failing. I thought I knew what I was doing. But what? But I didn't. I was just good at seeming successful, posting the right photos, using the right hashtags. But the actual business, I never really understood it. What don't you understand? Cash flow, expenses, how to actually make money instead of just looking like I make money. That's an important distinction. I know. Dad, I know I've been terrible to you. I know I don't deserve your help. But would you look at my books? Tell me what I'm doing wrong? I thought about it. Send me your last 12 months of financials. I'll take a look. Really? Really. Her books were a mess. Classic entrepreneur mistake. Revenue looked good on paper, but expenses ate everything. She was paying for a fancy office she didn't need, software subscriptions she didn't use, and a social media presence that cost more than it brought in. I met her for coffee in Burlington and walked her through it. You're bleeding money in 3 places. Office space, marketing spend, and these subscription services. Cut all 3 by 70% and you'll be profitable. But the office makes me look legitimate. Legitimate to who? Your clients pay for results, not for how nice your office looks. But the marketing. Is your marketing bringing in clients? She checked her notes. No. Most of my clients come from referrals. Then why are you spending $8,000 a month on marketing that doesn't work? She stared at the numbers. I never thought about it that way. Start thinking about it that way. Business isn't about looking successful. It's about being successful. She made the cuts. 3 months later, her agency was profitable for the first time in 2 years. She called to tell me, and I could hear the difference in her voice. Pride. Real pride. Not the Instagram kind. Dad, I did it. I actually did it. You did. Thank you for showing me how. I didn't show you how. I showed you what to look at. You figured out the rest. The reconciliation with Kyle took longer. He sold his Liberty Village condo, paid off his debts with the equity, moved to a smaller place in Scarborough, started cooking at home instead of eating out every night. The dinners at the truck stop became regular. Every other Thursday. Coffee, pie, and conversation. He asked questions I'd never expected from him. How I'd evaluated properties, how I'd managed tenants, how I'd balanced the driving job with the real estate business. Why didn't you ever tell us? He asked one night. Would you have listened? He thought about it. No, probably not. That's why I didn't tell you. But we missed so much. All those years, we could have been learning from you. You weren't interested in learning from a truck driver. I was an idiot. You were young. And your mother reinforced certain narratives. That's not an excuse. No, it's not. But it's context. 6 months after the divorce, Kyle came to me with a proposal. "Dad, I want to learn the property business. Really learn it. Would you let me work with you?" "Work with me how?" "However you'll have me. Property inspections, tenant relations, whatever needs doing. I'll start at the bottom. The bottom is messy. Fixing toilets at 2 a.m., dealing with angry tenants, negotiating with contractors who are trying to overcharge you. I know. You've never gotten your hands dirty in your life. I know that too. That's why I need to start." I looked at my son, really looked at him. Something had changed. The Bay Street arrogance was gone. In its place was something I hadn't seen since he was a boy. Humility. "There's a building in Hamilton that needs work," I said. "Older property. Needs new HVAC, new roof, updated electrical. 3 months of work, minimum. I'll do it. You'll be working alongside trades, electricians, plumbers, HVAC technicians, blue-collar workers." "Good. I need to learn what that means." He started the next week. Showed up in work boots and jeans instead of his Bay Street suits. The contractors were skeptical at first. Another rich kid playing at real work. But Kyle surprised them. Surprised me too. He listened. He learned. He got his hands dirty and didn't complain. When the electrician explained how circuit breakers worked, Kyle took notes. When the plumber showed him how to fix a leaky faucet, Kyle practiced until he could do it himself. 3 months turned into 6. The Hamilton building was finished on time and under budget. Kyle had learned more about real estate in those 6 months than he'd learned about anything in 4 years of business school. "Dad," he said the day we signed off on the final inspection, "I want to keep doing this." "Doing what?" "This. Real work, building things, not pushing paper on Bay Street." "What about your finance career?" "I quit last month. Didn't want to tell you until I knew this was what I really wanted." "And is it?" He looked at the building we'd just renovated. Solid, functional, valuable. "Yeah, it is." Megan found her own path. Her agency pivoted from influencer marketing to small business consulting, helping entrepreneurs understand their numbers the way I'd helped her understand hers. She was good at it, better than she'd been at the influencer stuff, because she was working with real businesses, solving real problems, instead of just making things look pretty on social media. "Dad," she said one evening when we were having dinner at her apartment, "I realized something." "What's that?" "All those years, I was embarrassed because I thought you were unsuccessful. But you were actually more successful than anyone I tried to impress. I just couldn't see it because it didn't look the way I thought success was supposed to look. Success rarely looks the way people expect. I know that now. I wish I'd learned it earlier." "You learned it when you were ready." Sandra called me once, about 8 months after the divorce was finalized. I almost didn't answer. "Rob, I made a mistake." "You made several." I know that now. Is there any way?" "Any chance." "Any chance of what?" "Of starting over, of trying again." "Sandra, you divorced me in public. You humiliated me in front of everyone I worked with. You had our daughter film it for social media." "I know. I was wrong. I was listening to the wrong people." "You were listening to yourself. That's the problem." "Rob, please." "Sandra, let me ask you something. If I didn't have the properties, if I was just what you thought I was, a tired old truck driver with a modest pension, would you be making this call?" The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. That's what I thought. "Goodbye, Sandra." I hung up. Today, I sit on my porch in Muskoka, watching the lake, reviewing rental income statements on my laptop. $24,312 was deposited into my business account this morning. Same amount every month now. The portfolio has grown. Kyle manages the Hamilton and Mississauga properties. He's good at it, patient, thorough. Nothing like the impatient young man who used to ask me for money like I should be grateful. Megan visits on weekends when she can. Her business consulting firm has 12 employees now. She built it herself. No handouts, no shortcuts. We have dinner together every Sunday. Just the 3 of us. No phones at the table, no social media. Just family. Sandra is still in Etobicoke, still working retail. Still wondering what went wrong. Last I heard, She was dating another personal trainer. Some people don't learn. I've built something lasting. Not just the properties, but the relationships. Real ones now. Based on respect, earned through action, not demanded through blood. If you're watching this, let me know where you're from. And remember, quiet people aren't weak people. Sometimes we're just choosing our battles carefully. And when we finally decide to speak, we make sure everyone is listening.